At the end of the 19th century, Africa was under siege. European empires, fueled by industrial power and imperial ambition, were carving the continent into colonies with ruthless efficiency. Kingdom after kingdom fell, some through deception, others through overwhelming force. Maps were redrawn in distant capitals, often without a single African voice at the table. But in the highlands of East Africa, one African ruler changed the course of history. His name was Menelik II, Emperor of Ethiopia, and he would become the man who proved that Africa could still decide its own fate. Menelik II came to power in 1889, ruling a nation with deep history, strong identity, and ancient institutions. Ethiopia was not a new state, it was a civilization that traced its roots back thousands of years. But history alone could not stop modern imperial armies. Menelik understood this clearly. Unlike many rulers who underestimated European intentions, Menelik studied them carefully. He read their treaties, he observed their rivalries, and most importantly, he recognized that resistance in the modern age required more than courage, it required preparation. When Italy sought to expand its colonial empire, it set its sights on Ethiopia. In 1889, Italian officials presented Menelik with the Treaty of Wuchale, a document written in two versions, one in Italian, the other in Amharic. The Italian version claimed Ethiopia was now an Italian protectorate. The Ethiopian version said nothing of the sort. This was not diplomacy. It was deception. When Menelik discovered the truth, he did not panic. He did not rush into war unprepared. Instead, he did something extraordinary. He began to prepare an entire nation for resistance. Menelik used diplomacy as a weapon. He played European powers against one another, purchasing modern rifles and artillery from France, Russia, and even Italy itself. He stockpiled weapons quietly, trained soldiers, and unified regional leaders under a single national cause. Crucially, Menelik understood unity. Ethiopia was a diverse empire of regions, languages, and cultures. In times past, such diversity could fracture resistance. But Menelik turned it into strength, mobilizing nobles, peasants, and warriors alike. Even more remarkable was the role of Empress Taitu Betul, whose political insight and resolve matched Menelik's own. When Italy finally invaded in 1895, they expected a quick victory. What they encountered instead was a nation ready for war. On the 1st of March 1896, the two forces met at Adwa. The Italians brought modern weapons and confidence born of colonial arrogance. Menelik brought numbers, strategy, terrain, knowledge, and unity. Over 100,000 Ethiopian soldiers, men and women, stood against one of Europe's most ambitious powers. The battle was decisive. Ethiopian forces overwhelmed Italian positions, cutting off units, exploiting terrain, and maintaining disciplined command. By the end of the day, Italy had suffered a crushing defeat. Thousands of Italian soldiers were killed or captured. The myth of European invincibility in Africa was shattered. For the first time in the colonial era, an African army had decisively defeated a European power in open battle. The impact was global. Italy was forced to recognize Ethiopia's independence. European capitals were stunned. Across Africa and the African diaspora, Adwa became a symbol of hope, a living proof that colonization was not destiny. But Menelik II's legacy did not end on the battlefield. After Adwa, He focused on modernization without surrendering sovereignty. Roads, communication systems, and centralized administration expanded. Addis Ababa grew into a permanent capital. Ethiopia engaged the world on its own terms, not as a colony, but as a sovereign state. Menelik ruled with pragmatism, strength, and vision. He understood that survival required adaptation but never submission. When he died in 1913, Menelik left behind more than a victorious empire. He left behind a message that echoed far beyond Ethiopia's borders. That Africa could resist, that unity could defeat empire, that sovereignty was worth defending at any cost. Today, Menelik II is remembered not just as a king, but as a turning point in world history. At Adwa, Africa stood its ground, and the world was forced to take notice